Roll call.
Counsel Barton?
Present.
Present. Counsel Chakutis?
Present.
Present. Counsel Calucci? Present. Counsel Field?
Present.
Present. Counsel Hogan?
Present.
Present. Counsel LaPierre?
Present.
Present. Counsel Lozey?
Present.
Present. Counsel Net?
Present.
Present. Counsel Stabbed?
Present.
Present. Counsel Walsh?
Present.
Present. Counsel Seer?
Present. All rise for a moment of silence.
Mr. President, Mr. President, family of Keith Bransfield, keep them in your prayers and thoughts.
Mr. President, also retired Lynn Police Officer Roger White and the family of Claire Welch. Claire was a faithful follower of our meetings on Tuesday evenings. She passed earlier this week. Thank you.
Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Accept the minutes from the meeting of January 22nd and 23rd.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made, seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Communications.
We have a communication from the mayor. I am hereby appointing Mrs. Margaret Phelps, 46 Piedmont Street, to serve on the Licensing Commission. Mrs. Phelps' term is effective immediately and will expire on June 1st, 2025. Sincerely, Mayor Thomas M. McGee.
Communications, what's the wish of the council?
Second.
Motion to approve.
Motion made, seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Communications from the Lynn City Council.
The reappointment of Joan Breed, 54 Nahant Street, to the Pine Grove Cemetery Commission. Mrs. Breed's term is effective immediately and will expire on September 26, 2022. With the appointment of Walter Prudy III, 9 Lynn End Road, Mass, to the Pine Grove Cemetery Commission, effective immediately and will expire on September 26, 2022.
It's the wish of the council.
Motion to approve.
Motion made, seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Public hearings.
We have the petition of Fiesta Shows for a carnival for the 4th of July Fireworks Fund to be held at the Keeney Park, June 20 to 23, with the setup from June 17th to 19th.
Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Seeing none, that part of the hearing is closed. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Seeing none, that part of the hearing is closed. What's the wish of the council?
Motion to approve, Mr. President.
Motion made.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I'm sorry, we need a roll call on that.
Counsel Barton?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Chakutis?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Calucci?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Field?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Hogan?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel LaPierre?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Lozey?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Net?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Stabbed?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Walsh?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Seer?
Yes. Next public hearing.
We have the petition of Eli Valinsky, 10 Fiddler Crabtree Lane in Mashpee, Massachusetts, owner of Tree Market LLC, to operate a marijuana retail business at 3 Mount Vernon Street.
Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak in favor, please state your name and your address, sir.
Mr. President, Matthew McKenna, 80 West Street, Braintree, Mass. From Lynch Associates on behalf of the petitioner, Eli Valinsky and Danny Rizzori. You have a presentation before you this evening. I'm happy to go through it. We also have some AV if the council has it, if you want to put it up on the screen. But quickly, Tree Market LLC is petitioning the council for a special permit for marijuana establishment, marijuana retailer specifically, at 3 Mount Vernon Street in the Ironbound property beneath the commuter rail. Again, quick summary, marijuana retailer only, approximately 2,650 square feet total with about 1,600 square feet of retail space. Again, Eli Valinsky will be co-founder, CEO, and store manager, and Danny Rizzori, co-founder, CFO, and president, both experienced marijuana operators out of the state of Washington, and their experience is listed here in the presentation. 3 Mount Vernon, again, property, I'm sure you folks are familiar with it, located in downtown Lynn. There's some photos there of the property, as well as a proposed floor plan that's still in the design stage. Again, an operations plan. The Tree Market LLC will absolutely be complying with all regulations and state law per Mass MGL and the CMR for the Cannabis Control Commission as an operations plan to certainly maintain diversion from minors and certainly theft and any other issues associated with the operations. One thing we do want to speak about is we do think this is a good location. There's plenty of parking in this location with 30-plus spots on-street parking, on Mount Vernon Street, as well as 100-plus off-street parking spots within 1,000 feet of the establishment, and obviously the adjacent bus stops and commuter station. And then certainly the security plan, Lantel Communications has been working the security plan. They have established law enforcement relationships here in Lynn already, and will obviously comply with all components of CMR and state law. The Tree Market LLC did engage with the City of Lynn through their process, EDIC, as well as the Marijuana Site Review Plan Committee. And happy to answer any questions should the council have any.
Okay, we'll go through the public hearing, and then if the council has any questions, okay?
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Seeing none, that part of the hearing is closed. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Seeing none, that part of the hearing is closed. Councilor Jacutis.
Motion to approve.
Motion made.
Second.
Seconded, discussion. Roll call.
Counsel Barton?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Chakutis?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Calucci? Absent. Counsel Field?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Hogan?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel LaPierre?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Lozey?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Net?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Staubed?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Walsh?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Seer?
Yes.
Yes.
Before we go on to our next public hearing, we got to go back to the appointments from the city council on the cemetery commission. We need a roll call. The motion was made to approve. It was seconded.
Mr. President,
Roll call.
motion.
This is for Joan Breed and Walter Prudian III.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made,
Second.
seconded, roll call.
Counsel Barton?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Chakutis?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Calucci? Absent. Counsel Field?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Hogan?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel LaPierre?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Lozey?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Net?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Staubed?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Walsh?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Seer?
Yes, motion carries. Next public hearing.
Petition of Matthew Huron of Good Chemistry, Inc., to open a marijuana retailer business at 696 Weston Ave, Monday through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 11, and on Sundays, 10 a.m. to 11 p.m.
Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Please state your name and your address, sir.
Good evening. My name is Jonathan Capano. I live at 101 North Common Street here in Lynn. I just have a few handouts that I'd like to pass out to the councilors. All right, as this will go around, get started. So my name is Jonathan Capano. I'm here at 101 North Common Street here in Lynn. I'm in my final year of law school over at New England Law Boston, and I'm currently working with Smith, Costello, and Crawford Public Policy Law Group. I've been with Smith, Costello, and Crawford for a year now, and I've worked exclusively in the cannabis practice. Jim Smith, the founding partner, and I both have strong roots to Lynn. Jim was a state representative for 8 years in Ward 6 representing Lynn. Jim apologizes for not being here tonight. He has a scheduling conflict in D.C. I was born and raised in Lynn. My family has a strong tie to the community and a strong relationship with the city. Jim and I have both invested in the city and its success and want to bring our best clients to the city. Good Chemistry was our firm's first cannabis client, and they've been a client for the past 6 years. Today we have over 24 clients in the cannabis industry. Good Chemistry is not only our firm's first client, but they're one of our premier clients. They do everything by the book. Good Chemistry received final licensure from both the Department of Public Health and the Cannabis Control Commission. This past Thursday, the Cannabis Control Commission gave Good Chemistry its final approval for their adult use marijuana licenses for each facility. They currently have a cultivation and product manufacturing facility in Bellingham, Massachusetts, and they have a registered marijuana dispensary in Worcester, and they will be the first adult use dispensary in Worcester. Good Chemistry has invested a great deal of time and effort into compliance, and it's a top priority. This same effort is to remain in compliance pertinent into their Lynn Special Permit application, which includes a number of key documents. First off being the security plan, which you'd find on page 8 in your document. Just a quick note, there hasn't been a single crime committed throughout the Commonwealth of any of these dispensaries. They're highly, highly secured, highly regulated, and they come with things such as duress buttons. You have multiple identification checks, and just in this dispensary alone, inside and outside, there will be 31 security cameras with a constant live feed, and Lynn Police Department will have a constant access to this. Another document you'll find here will be the line queue plan. This helps the store manage the amount of customers that come in each day, and Good Chemistry abides by the 3 deep rule, which basically means that there's only 3 customers at each register at a time. And the security vestibule, whereas one checkpoint for someone's identification, will hold each customer coming in and out of the dispensary on a 1-to-1 basis, so no one, for one that leaves, one can come in. For the traffic impact statement, we identified 81 parking spots in Market Square that can be used under the city's new pay-by-phone app, the mobile app. Each of these spots are 3 to 4 minute walk from the location, and they include spots like the Elm Street MBTA station and the other Market Square spots. Another key thing that we're going to do is we're not going to allow our employees to park on site in an effort to try to mitigate as much damage as possible. Also to note, between Center Street and Mall Street, there's about 18 spots for on-street parking as well. If you turn to page 17, you can see a rendering of our floor plan. These dispensaries are sleek, they're high-end, they put a lot of time and effort and money into the look and the design of their place. They want their customers to have the best product available. And that also goes into the signage and exterior visual plan that you can see on page 12. Per state regulations, there's no neon lights, there's no flashing, there's no leaf symbols or anything of that nature. It's small and it fits the community. Lastly, I just want to say Lynn is a unique community, and Good Chemistry is someone that's going to fit this whole this mold. They're hardworking, well-prepared, and they invest in their community. To kind of talk about this a little bit more, I'd like to turn it over to Joe Megacy, who is one of the managers of Good Chemistry. I'd be happy to answer any questions about the special permit application. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Please state your name and your address, sir.
My name is Joe Megacy. I'm Denver, Colorado, and I'm a manager at Good Chemistry of Massachusetts, Inc. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present tonight to the council. I wanted to give you a little background of our company, if I might. Our company was founded by Matthew Huron in the year 2000 in the San Francisco Bay Area. Mr. Huron founded this company largely because he wanted to provide medical marijuana relief to his father and father's partner who were suffering from HIV/AIDS and the community there in the Bay Area who were suffering from HIV/AIDS. In 2009, due to the regulatory uncertainty in California, Mr. Huron came to Colorado, where the regulations for brick-and-mortar cannabis stores were just being started. In there, we started up our first brick-and-mortar store on Colfax Avenue near the Colorado State Capitol, and since then we've expanded to 3, now almost 4 locations in Denver, and a 50,000 square foot cultivation in the city of Denver as well. We also have 1 store in Aurora, Colorado. We have always had a deep commitment to compliance and being good neighbors. We regularly participate in the formation of regulations and laws at the Colorado level, and as well as here in the Commonwealth. We also have a commitment to be good neighbors, and we support numerous philanthropic charities and community organizations. And we are members of all of our chambers of commerce where we do operations, and we like to give back to our community. It's a central tenet of our company's business. So far in Colorado, there's been a number, the last year there has been approximately over $260 million in tax revenue and fees generated by the cannabis industry. In the city of Aurora, where we operate, Last year, there was generated approximately $10 million in marijuana tax revenue, which has created opportunities to improve roads and transit and homeless shelters as well. We are proud of the positive effect that we're having in the community. We employ nearly 180 people. We expect that this facility here in Lynn, if it is approved, would employ at the very minimum 20 people, 15 to 20 people, depending on traffic. And we are very excited for the opportunity to become members of the Lynn community and have a positive impact in the Lynn economy, providing jobs and much-needed tax revenue to the community. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Please state your name and your address, sir.
My name is Joe Ciota. I live at 46 Maple Ave in Nahant. My family has run Tony the Florist for past 80 years, over 80 years in the city of Lynn. And we're approached by Good Chemistry and have entered into an agreement with them, and we feel it would be a great use for the property, and great for the community and great for the city of Lynn. And we support them. We hope that the petition would be looked on favorably. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Please come to the podium. Please state your name and your address.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marvin Ippolite. I know most of y'all. I'm in favor because I think, obviously, this is good. There's a lot of people in our city who have been arrested for marijuana, and it's amazing that our state voted to legalize it and allow for it to be sold legally. So while I am in favor, the only thing that I am concerned about, and I'm going to ask the council to keep this in mind, especially in my ward, in Ward 5, there have been a lot of people who have been arrested as a result of selling marijuana. So when we think about jobs, when we think about this business coming in and how the city's going to benefit for it, I ask you to please think about those people who have been arrested in the past. Give them a chance so that they can get a piece of the pie as well. But overall, in favor, and I think this is wonderful for our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Seeing none, that part of the hearing is closed. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Seeing none, that part of the hearing is closed. Councilor Hogan.
Motion to approve.
Motion made, seconded, discussion. Councilor LaPierre.
Thank you, Mr. President. General comment. I know the representation for this particular proposal doesn't reflect what I'm about to say, but in general, we approved medical marijuana at 953 Western Avenue last Valentine's Day, February 14th of 2018. Nothing has been done at that site. That troubles me, and I'm connecting the legal representation, and just so we can speak to folks regarding this proposal, hopefully that will not be the prospect of this proposal, as I say, but the same legal representation. I would just want Attorney Smith and his team to move forward in a very diligent, respectful manner to the city of Lynn, not dragging over a year's time. Because in that medical marijuana, when we approve that, we've done a lot of homework, individually, meeting, spent a lot of time, spent Valentine's night here rather than being elsewhere, approving that particular medical marijuana. The apothecary is up and running on the Linway, so I don't want it to be an impression that they get the special permit from this council and then they're allowed to drag their feet for a year plus before doing anything with regard to their locations. So Mr. Rosenberg, who's in charge of the Old World remedies that we approved, I plead with them to begin doing something so that this council doesn't have to take negative action going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. LaPierre. Mr. Barton.
I guarantee nothing like that will happen. They ran into problems, and it wasn't because of the company that it was. So I guarantee this will go a lot smoother.
Thank you, Councilor Staben.
I just wanted to say that I support what Councilor LaPierre said, that license was, I believe, 2017.
approval and, yeah, but in the works,
And
right?
nothing's happened there. And I think if something doesn't happen soon, then maybe we need to bring them back before this body to decide what's going to go on with that medical and ultimately recreational license.
Council Field.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know there's been some public concern about some discussion that the council had in the past as far as delegating them throughout different wards in the city. And Ward 6 seems to be a focus, and I just want to kind of, to be fair to Councilor Hogan, who's just new to the council within the past month or so, that these locations are being selected by these individual companies and coming before us for approval. We're not selecting particular properties focused only on Ward 6. I know that was a concern, and I've listened to a lot of those concerns. So that was one of the things I just wanted to bring to the attention of the council, that there have been folks from Ward 6 that do share that concern.
Thank you, Council. Anyone else? Roll call.
Counsel Barton?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Chakutis?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Calucci? Absent. Counsel Field?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Hogan?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel LaPierre?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Lozey?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Net?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Staben?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Walsh?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Seer?
Yes.
Yes.
Public hearings to be set down.
We have the petition of Fiesta Shows for a carnival for the 4th of July Fireworks Fund to be held at Lynn English High School parking lot on April 17th through the 21st, with the setup from April 15th to the 16th. Petition of Mary Ann Staniunis of Uncommon Feast LLC to operate a commercial kitchen cafe and event space at 271 Weston Ave, Monday through Sunday, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Petition of A to Z Convenience Store at 264 Essex Street for a sign permit. Petition of Jordan Avery for Massachusetts Green Retail, Inc. to operate a recreational cannabis retail business at 829A Boston Street. Petition of Comcast for a grant of location at 38-54 Exchange Street and 11 Spring Street for the purpose of installing a new underground conduit. Petition of National Grid to install conduits from 4 poles to 4 different manholes on Howard Street. Petition of National Grid to install 13 joint-hole poles and anchors on poles, all on Howard Street. Petition of National Grid for a grant of location for its water and sewer work in conjunction with its Lynn No. 21 substation yard construction on the Marine Boulevard.
It's the wish of the council.
Set them down.
Motion made,
Second.
seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Committee reports. Personnel, Councilor LaPierre.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just some background on the wage theft ordinance that this body approved last spring. There was a composition committee of 8 that have been nominated and submitted names to our subcommittee. This evening, we had the opportunity to interview such candidates, and we would put before you unanimous decision by the subcommittee the following names and from their respective organization for the full council's consideration. Mr. Bob Reynolds of the New Lynn Coalition, Mr. Justin Anschwitz, who would be our city council selection, and he is also a carpenter from Local 26. Sergio Espinosa from the North Shore Latino Business Association. Kathleen Centora from the Building Trades. Katie Cohen from the North Shore Labor Council. Nicole Sedano from the Lynn Workers Center. Rick Wood from the Lynn Area Chamber of Commerce. And Andrew Russo, who would be the mayoral appointment. That would comprise our 8-person panel and committee that would work with our legal department and in the enforcement of wage theft throughout our city. As many of you know, wage theft is a huge issue around the Commonwealth, and we should be proud of the work we've done in setting forth one of the strongest wage theft, anti-wage theft ordinances, or wage theft ordinances on the books, following places like Boston and other areas who are now looking to mimic or replicate the strength of our ordinance. So this body will be meeting quite regularly and reporting to the legal department and, of course, our appointments as well. But that is what we would submit as a subcommittee to this full council for consideration, and that was the only business we took up this evening. Motion to approve.
Motion made, seconded, roll call.
Counsel Barton?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Chakutis?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Calucci? Yes. Counsel Field?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Hogan?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel LaPierre?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Lozey?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Net?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Staben?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Walsh?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Seer?
Yes. Ordinance and rules, Counselor Lozey.
Yes, Mr. President, there were two items on the agenda. One was approved to be set down for a public hearing, which was the discussion regarding the proposed ordinance relative to the salaries and benefits of department heads in the city of Lynn, and it was a unanimous decision. The other item was tabled.
Motion made,
Second.
seconded, roll call.
Counsel Barton?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Chakutis?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Calucci?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Field?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Hogan?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel LaPierre?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Lozey?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Net?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Staben?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Walsh?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Seer?
Yes. Licensing, Counselor Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. President. It was unanimous vote of the committee. Motion to approve.
Motion made,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Utilities, Counselor Walsh.
Again, thank you. Motion to approve, unanimous vote of committee.
Motion made,
Second.
seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Ways and Means, Counselor Net.
Mr. President, yes, all voted unanimously by the committee to approve. I make a motion to accept.
Motion made.
Second.
Would the clerk read all the transfers and the grants?
Transfer the sum of $100,000 from the account of Essex Tech expense to the account of law expense to fund outside legal services for pending litigation. Transfer the sum of $14,276 from the account of CFO payroll to the account of IT payroll to fund emergency telephone operator for the remainder of fiscal year 19. Certify as an available fund the amount of $100,000 as allotted to the City of Lynn Office of Economic and Community Development by Massachusetts Gaming Commission to be used by the city for the purpose of performing a traffic signalization inventory of all city intersections. Certify as an available fund the amount of $20,460 as allotted to the City of Lynn Fire Department by the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency for the federal fiscal year 18 Emergency Management Grant. Certify as an available fund the amount of $27,730 as allotted to the City of Lynn School Department by the Department of Early Education for the care of the fiscal year 19 Parent-Child Home Program Expansion Grant. Required form of vote to submit a statement of interest. Resolved, having it convened in an open meeting on February 12, 2019, prior to the closing date, the Lynn City Council, in accordance with its charter, bylaws, and ordinances, has voted to authorize the superintendent to submit the Massachusetts School Building Authority the statement of interest form dated February 15, 2019, for the Lynn Vocational Technical Institute, 80 Neptune Boulevard, Lynn. This describes and explains the following deficiencies and the priority categories for which an application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future. Replacement of windows and doors as priority statement of interest for the MSBA Accelerated Repair Program for 2019. And hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting this statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or the approval of an application, the awarding of a grant, or any other funding commitment from Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits Lynn School District to filing an application for funding with the Mass School Building Authority.
Motion's been made, seconded. Discussion, roll call.
Counsel Barton?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Chakutis?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Calucci? Yes. Counsel Field?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Hogan?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel LaPierre?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Lozey?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Net?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Staben?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Walsh?
Yes.
Counsel Walsh?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Seer?
Yes.
Yes.
Was there emergency, Counselor Net?
Yes, Mr. President, they were all emergency voted by the committee. I make a motion to accept that as well.
Motion made for emergency, seconded. Roll call.
Counsel Barton?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Chakutis?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Calucci?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Field?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Hogan?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel LaPierre?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Lozey?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Net?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Staben?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Walsh?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Seer?
Yes.
Yes.
Committee of the Whole, that's me. Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made, seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Old business. Any old business? Any new business? Councilor Lapierre.
Thank you, Mr. President. In following with the support of the resolution that I will read to this august body, that the school committee took up on January 31st, we are trying to embark on fully funding of the Lynn Public Schools in a statewide initiative. This resolution from the council would just support that effort. There is a statewide effort to fully fund our schools. Lynn, as you may know, is short right now of investment of about $47 million per year, and that includes a lot of criteria: low-income kids, English language learners, children with special needs, and health insurance costs. So those are the areas that are being recommended for fully funding. It's a State House sort of priority in this legislative session. And as I said, our counterparts at the school committee and the school district, and working collaboratively with the Lynn Teachers Union, Sheila O'Neill, its president, I would like to offer this as a resolution and hope that we can support this as a body. So I will read it to you. It's a resolution in support of full funding for Lynn Public Schools. Whereas free public schools available to all students without exception are foundational to our democracy and are required by the state constitution. And whereas all of our students, no matter where they live, deserve high-quality public schools that teach the whole child and provide them with a rich school experience that addresses their academic, social, and emotional needs. Whereas the state's foundation budget formula, which determines state aid to each district, has been woefully out of date for years, thereby underfunding our districts by more than $1 billion per year for essential educational services. And whereas an updated foundation budget formula would bring the Lynn Public Schools up $47 million in additional state aid each year, allowing this district to move closer to providing all students with the education to which they are entitled as residents of the Commonwealth. And whereas the legislature failed to pass any foundation budget legislation in the last session, leaving districts, educators, and students without the funds necessary to support the schools our students deserve in every district in the state. And whereas updating the formula would help the Lynn Public Schools reach appropriate staffing levels to address overcrowding, substantial increases in the English learner population, and students' social emotional needs, and attend to millions of dollars in deferred maintenance that is threatening our schools' learning environment, among other needs. Therefore, be it resolved that the Lynn City Council urges the legislature to approve and fully fund a new foundation budget formula by May 1st of 2019. For your consideration, a non-binding resolution.
I'll second that
Motion
resolution.
made, seconded, discussion. Councilor Biden.
Yes, my question would be, how much more financial burden would that put on the city?
So depending on where this is at and where the discussions go at the State House, it's a little bit up in the air right now. I know there is work by our delegation to make sure that cities like Lynn are not harmed on the city side when they get the school dollars, but there is no real way to measure that right now because they're just in discussions. I will say we had Speaker of the House, Mr. President, Council President Sayre and Councilor Colucci came. We had Speaker DeLeo tour the Ingalls School a couple Fridays ago, and he saw firsthand some of the needs. So I think he's keenly aware, working collaboratively with everyone there to get Lynn the dollars that it needs. And a lot of that, if it's not shifted from the city, we might be able to do some of these improvements, you know, facility improvements, health insurance, some of the things that are really strapping the city at this time. It could alleviate a lot of those pressures.
I agree, but I think we need to know if it's going to cost the city more money, because we don't have the money together.
I think we really have to look at the whole picture and see exactly what the funding's going to look like, where it's going to come from, and what implications may come of that. But we cannot turn away tens of millions of dollars that the schools do need. So there is a maintenance of effort, as we know, and I think those details will have to be worked out with particularly gateway cities, because if you're talking about $47 million and the contribution from the city being $15 or $20 million to meet that maintenance of effort, I don't think anyone thinks that that's a reality, especially where we're at in the city right now. But at the same time, you don't want to turn away the public school dollars that we've been, you know, operating without for so long.
While we have the mayor here, I'd like to ask the mayor a question if I could. Would you mind come up to the podium? I know you sit on the school committee. I don't know if you heard this whole discussion that we're having about the state giving us more money for schools. With that,
I just came in, so if you want to ask the question again, I'd be happy to answer it.
Well, on the floor right now, Mayor, is a resolution that you folks passed to fully fund the schools, the foundation budget recommendations. The question from Council Barton was around the maintenance of effort. If we were to get all this money, is it going to be obliged to the city to have to do a maintenance of that amount?
Well, it's a good question because net school spending is impacted by the money that we get from the state, but the reality is that the schools need substantial money to, I'm sure Councilor LaPierre can speak to it a bit, but, and I know some members of the school committee here, but when you look across the board at what's going on in the schools, and there's really a substantial need for the investment in the schools. We had a great meeting with Speaker DeLeo at the schools last week. With the delegation and these discussions as part of the larger discussion related to what legislation will pass related to increased funding. The results of a panel, and you may know this, Councilor Barton, was that we're probably underfunding between $1 and $2 billion a year in terms of school funding. So those numbers are real. And when I was in the legislature, I was pushing hard to ensure that those dollars were put back in so that cities like Lynn and across the Commonwealth got the dollars. And I know that the discussions are, how is that going to be fair related to cities and towns? That's a separate issue. But there's, whether it be the funding we get for the school building authority or related to the increased Chapter 70, that's going to be all part of the discussions, and there's several pieces of legislation filed, one by the Senate, one by the House, and one by the governor. And so those questions will be, how do we continue to fund the dollars we need in cities like Lynn, which I think the proposal from the school committee or our resolution reflected. We need those dollars in the city, absolutely we need them. But the larger discussion will be, how do we ensure that the city gets the money we need and the impact is not reflected, I think, of what you're worrying about. But I would say that the importance is to get those dollars here and to work with it. And I know Mike Bertino is here as well. We've talked about how we're going to move forward related to our ongoing budget crisis that we face in the city that continues. I know you're all well aware of that. But I feel strongly that we need to really see the state stepping up and putting the dollars to the cities like Lynn that really need those dollars. And we'll be working with them to try and help see other dollars and other investments come in, whether it be dollars related to the charter school reimbursement, which would be dollars that would be really helpful, special ed increases that would help us on our special ed impacts, as well as the dollars that would come in to go to the schools that need the dollars. So those are all part of the larger discussions at the legislature. But I do think it's important that we send a message that we aren't getting the dollars we need to educate the children in the city of Lynn. And we're well aware, we're really bursting at the seams in terms of our facilities. Great things are going on in the schools. There's a lot of great things happening, but with class sizes at 30 plus in some of the schools, it really is being a challenge. So these dollars are important. It's always a balancing act. How do we get there? But I do feel strongly that we're moving in the right direction in the state with the legislature to start to understand that the funding that we anticipated to educate our children is something we need support from the state. So there's not a clear answer to that, Buzzy, but it's I think we made the right proposal and resolution at the school committee. I think it sends a strong message to both House and Senate and the administration that they need to take a serious look at how we're funding our schools and that cities like Lynn need the support of the state to ensure we're doing what we need to do in the city.
Thank you. Cleared it up for me.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I would also just like to recognize Michael Sadowite and Lorraine Gately from the school committee for being here tonight.
Thank you. Anyone else? Do we need a roll call?
Yep.
Okay. Motion's been made, seconded, roll call.
Counsel Barton?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Chakutis?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Calucci?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Field?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Hogan?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel LaPierre?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Lozey?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Net?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Starboard?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Walsh?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Seer?
Yes. I just want to say, that's the tough thing about going first, huh, Buzz?
There you
Gotta be
go.
a leader, brother. Okay, Josh Feiler from, what is it called? The Union Hospital Reuse Planning Study is going to give a presentation.
So thank you very much. Again, my name is Josh Fiala. I'm with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. I'm principal land use planner there at the agency. I'm also a licensed architect and a certified planner, and work in planning, and oftentimes situations similar to what the Lynn Hospital, the Union Hospital situation is, where you have a real estate economic development need in looking at a specific property and how that property might redevelop in the marketplace. So just a little bit about MAPC. I'm sure you've heard of the Regional Planning Agency. We serve Lynn and 100 other communities in the greater Boston region and provide technical assistance services, such as the services we provided here in Lynn on the Union Hospital property. For this project, it's a proactive effort by the city. We were invited here by the city and the council and the EDIC and brought forward to study the Union Hospital property and its potential for reuse after the hospital consolidation occurs. That study was funded by North Shore Medical Center themselves and also in part through an additional technical assistance grant which was provided by MAPC to provide a little extra hours to the study. The study itself was facilitated by our agency and led by myself, and it was really to focus on the potential future of the hospital and set the stage for that future and actions that the city can take proactively to ensure that that property has an active life and future. We, through the process, met with the community at 2 community meetings last fall at the end of the summer and documented community preferences that were expressed at those meetings, tried to identify shared goals between the community and the stakeholders involved in the process, and then ultimately, through our study and analysis, have recommended zoning changes for the property, which we think will help to bring a new life to that property. So here's the context of the property in the city of Lynn. I'm sure many of you know it well, up in Ward 1 on the northern side of the city. And it's primarily a single-family residential area by Lynn Woods. There's an overall aerial view of the property that fronts on Linfield Street, and you can see the primary hospital facilities there and some medical office facilities to the south from the main hospital building, which are being redeveloped as the medical village today. All of those parts of the property are zoned R1 today, so single-family residential zones. The hospital was originally built under special permit in the 1950s, and that's primarily a residential zone today with a few other uses allowed, but mostly single-family residential on 10,000 square foot lots. We saw the study really as finding, in the simple Venn diagram, trying to identify opportunities for the property to move forward that would be at the center of what the neighborhood would deem acceptable, what the city of Lynn would find advantageous, and what the property owner or future property owners would find viable on the property itself as well. To try to identify what that overlapping set of interests would be, we've looked at the property both from each of those perspectives and had meetings with, I mentioned the community meetings, but also met with North Shore Medical Center leadership and met with Councilor Lozzi and the EDIC members to discuss from all those perspectives where this might want to head. We also did physical fits, so using scaled three-dimensional models, tried to understand the feasibility from an architectural and site development perspective. We also did some residual land use and land value analysis, so testing the financial feasibility of some of the options, and then looked at the legal permissibility and the zoning constraints and the zoning recommendations that would come out of that study, and also looked at the potential traffic impacts, those impacts that were identified by the community as important to them, traffic, impacts on schools, impacts on property values, et cetera. So our process occurred from about August or so, July or August, through October was really the focus of our study. And then we had some comments and revisions from the city on the final report that's in front of you, and then provided that final report in December of last year. We understand that our study is a very focused part of a much larger process of redevelopment, which has been underway before we were brought onto the project and will continue for years afterwards to identify a new owner for the property, to redevelop the property, and then to see that redevelopment come to fruition through construction. Several community goals were articulated as we advanced the process: sensitivity to the surrounding context, encouraging reinvestment in the property that's positive for the community, limiting the impacts on schools, providing new job opportunities to replace some of those which may be lost in the consolidation of hospitals, and then contributing to the City of Lynn's tax base. All of those were major priorities and what we were thinking about underlying the options here. In the first community meeting, we went through a series of potential uses on the site, and the attendees, of which there were, I think, in the neighborhood of 60 or so that first meeting. We had a series of both paper voting and interactive cell phone voting in the meeting to get the response to what the types of uses would be acceptable to the community. Senior living was one of those that had quite favorable responses. Then we took those responses and analyzed them in preparation for the second community meeting, which we brought back actual physical fits of those alternatives that proved to be acceptable from the community's perspective, potentially, and then tested their viability both from the site planning perspective and from the financial perspective that I mentioned. And then all of that set of analysis and that process has basically resulted in the zoning recommendations, which are kind of the heart of the report that's in front of you. The alternatives which I mentioned were brought back to the community at a second community forum for them to weigh in on again to see how they felt about those alternatives when they actually looked more like a real project that we had conceptualized. Here's an example of the types of analysis that we did using this three-dimensional model of the context which we developed. About 13 acres are available for development. You can see about 5 acres here, which are the Medical Village Center, which has been in front of you as a project recently. And this is an example of an assisted living type approach where you'd have a assisted living facility on fronting Linfield Street, where the major portion of the hospital is today, and then a senior living clustered single-family home development, which could be associated potentially with the assisted living facility. So that's one type of option that was explored based upon the community's feedback and our own feasibility analysis. And this is what then results in the zoning recommendations, both from a use perspective, but also from a dimensional perspective and parking requirements and all of this set of zoning recommendations that are in front of you. So to summarize those zoning recommendations, which we feel are one of the city's most prominent actions to take moving forward, because you can define the ability of the property to move forward from what it is today. Today, we don't think there's much market potential to develop the property as single family, which it is zoned today. So zoning changes would be required, we believe, to create a more marketable property and a more redevelopable property. Our recommendation would be to create a new medical village zoning district, an underlying zone, which would be where the hospital properties occur today. And those medical village uses would be broken into 2 sub-districts, and that's a response to the community. There's a real difference in the context between the Linfield frontage and the Woodland Avenue North frontage, which is much more residential. And so we would allow potentially a little bit more uses appeared to be acceptable on the Linfield frontage, which we're saying is sub-district 1. So things like assisted living facilities, senior living row houses, senior living multifamily, which would be less than 100 units, public parks and open space integrated with those uses, general offices, clinic, or medical village, which would be a continuation of the medical village you've got started there today. Each of those we would recommend being allowed by right to invite those economic development opportunities. Additional uses, and those also based upon our feedback from the community, appeared to be relatively acceptable from their perspective. Uses that were maybe a little less acceptable or would be a little more impact on the community, we recommend as being included in the zoning package, but by special permit, which would allow a little more control to occur. And those would be senior living multifamily of 100 units or more, and senior living mixed use, commercial, retail, or restaurant mixed in with residential, potentially above or horizontally mixed in several buildings. You'll also note that each of the residential options are defined as senior living. That was very important to the community to not have a major impact on the schools. And so we think, given the context of the neighborhood and the need for senior housing in Lynn, that this would be an appropriate restriction on that residential use here. And then in the second sub-district, which is the rear portion of the property, which is the satellite parking today for the hospital off Woodland Avenue North, uses would include single living, one family detached house, the 10,000 square foot lot that is there today. That's basically what is allowed today on all of the properties. Or a senior living, one family detached house on a clustered lot, which would be a smaller lot to allow for the tighter clustering of houses integrated with open space features. So that would be a little bit different housing type. It'd still be a single family home, but it'd be a variety from what's out there today. And then public parks and open space, which could connect to the Lynn Woods as well. And then uses allowed by special permit on the rear lot would include assisted living facility, senior living row house, or accessory uses to the MVD1, the other sub-district, which would include parking. And then the dimensional requirements that we've recommended are in line with the context of the existing hospital. So that puts us up to what we've defined a similar tiering by right, say 3-story by right, 5-story by special permit, with a maximum height associated with a 3-story of 45 feet, or maximum height by special permit of 70 feet. And that's a scale which is consistent with the building that's there today that the community is used to, and that's been in existence for many decades now. And the maximum building coverage of 30% and a minimum open space requirement of 15% to really make sure that there's amenity there in open space, such as exists on the hospital property today. And then stepping down in that scale and height to the second sub-district off Woodland Avenue North, which would include 2.5 stories by right, 35 feet, and that would be what you're allowed, not any higher than that to respect the existing single-family home context. We would also recommend a 10% affordable housing requirement for projects over 20 units. That would just help to balance the socioeconomics of the future project, and off-street parking and loading, which we reviewed the existing requirements and wouldn't recommend a change from that, which are at 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit, or 1 space per 300 square feet of office space. And then we have also outlined several design standards which we think would help the project to fit into the design context of its surrounding neighborhood, including landscape buffers and how the buildings are oriented, et cetera. So next steps as we see them, and as we would recommend potentially some actions for the council to act upon, to take the document which you have before you and allow it to be posted publicly so it can be reviewed and sort of spread more widely than it has currently been. And that would probably be through the city's website and through the EDIC website. And then also to share the final report with North Shore Medical Center. I don't know the current status of their disposition process, but they will have an RFP which will be forthcoming if it's not already out, and the substance of our report would be useful in that regard. And then also we have provided an additional online survey if there is a desire or need for additional community feedback, particularly when the final report is fully available, and the community at large could weigh in on that again, and we'd be happy to look at the results of those survey responses. And then to coordinate with North Shore Medical Center about the schedule of the disposition process from their perspective and the draft of the RFP release, and review and provide comments. And we've provided in the report some information to make that possible. And then I think the biggest thing really is to advance the zoning changes, either as we've recommended them or as you see fit to adapt or modify them. But we think it is critically important for the property to have a positive life for the city, to have a new type of opportunity defined through zoning. And that will allow the city to have the most control over the property and as opposed to limiting opportunities and then having something else happen where the developer or future owner has to maybe try an approach such as more of a Dover Amendment type use. We think that the zoning is the best protection against that. I will end it there, and I guess just open for any questions or clarification that you'd all seek.
Councilor Lozey.
Thank you. Josh, thank you for that presentation. Thank you for your work that you've been doing on this. And I do want to mention that the city council did rezone for the medical village, that area, so it's not solely restricted to residential R1. One thing that I am a bit confused on, are you recommending that any type of zoning now, or just moving forward once we have potential developers?
I think it's a decision that the city can make. It's a little dependent on, it's a little bit of a chicken and egg problem. If the city would like to wait and see what happens from the disposition process and what kind of responses the North Shore Medical Center would take, that's one type of approach. And I think there are advantages to that type of approach because you can see what might come forward. But I think so that's one approach. I think the approach that we're recommending is actually to go ahead and proactively make zoning changes as we're recommending. And we think the advantage of that type of approach is that you actually get to potentially attract more interest to their disposition process by having zoning in place, which would allow more opportunity. And by doing so, also control that opportunity in a direction that you want it to occur. That's assuming the types of zoning recommendations are the kind that the city or community at large would like to see happen. If they're not, then maybe the wait and see approach is a better one. But if these types of opportunities that I've outlined this evening are the types of opportunities that would be acceptable potentially on the site, then I think it would be best to be proactive and would help the redevelopment process.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilor Field.
Hi, Josh, thank you. At one of the forums, I did have the same question. When we look at the hospital, the existing hospital structure, one of the concerns was what do we need to do to be proactive? Because we look at different communities like Quincy, where the hospital that closed there has been dormant, or no progress has been made in over a year. And then we even look at Malden, and that same facility has been ignored for over 20 years, if I'm correct. So we don't want to have that same situation happen here in Lynn. So I do appreciate you saying to be more proactive, because we have two local communities that face in the same situation that we're in.
Yeah, and there's another example in the region, Medfield State Hospital as well. In Arlington had another hospital in the, I think it's called the Sims Hospital, which took a decade or so to redevelop. And they are difficult redevelopment processes just because of the scale of the facility, which is already there. And that facility needs to be dealt with in some way, either redeveloped as its own facility, which is sometimes difficult because of the nature of hospital buildings, or demolished, which carries a major cost with it. And in our financial calculations, we did pin that cost based upon other studies the state has performed. And the figure we came up with is it would be about a $3 million minimum investment to prepare the site for redevelopment with the hospital structure there. So meaning bringing the hospital down. And that's why the types of opportunities that we're talking about have to have a certain level of density and scale to be able to carry that type of site redevelopment cost and to be able to prepare the property appropriately. So, it's difficult. I think the way the zoning could help, of course, is by making it more real for the next owner that the city is willing to sort of look at those other types of futures for the property. And our report is one thing, but our report doesn't provide too much guarantee for someone to invest that type of money. But a zoning change would provide more clarity about that future.
And as far as a zoning change, do you consider it two different particular properties, meaning the far back satellite lot? Because if you're suggesting that the raising of the existing hospital being a high-cost burden to any potential development, if it is a potential commercial development, they would need that back parking area likely for, just growing up in the area, I knew how used that satellite parking lot was when the hospital was in full operation. So I would imagine that if it was a commercial component to the redevelopment of that existing structure of the hospital, they would probably need the parking area in the rear.
Potentially. Yeah, I think it would depend a lot on the mix of the program of the redevelopment. That's why something like an assisted living facility might be more beneficial, because the parking required to support that type of facility is less, and you might then be able to get an assisted living facility on the front portion of the property, and then additionally some single-family home type development on the rear. And that whole package of redevelopment might help to bring the revenue in alignment with the costs of redevelopment.
Any other questions? No other questions? Well, thank you, Josh. Appreciate your time. Good presentation. Up in a few minutes, we're going to have the Collins Center come up and propose capital improvement plan for 2020 through 2024.
Thank you. My name is David Colton. I'm here today with my colleagues Sarah Concanon and Tony Teresi. We're from the Collins Center for Public Management, which was created in 2008 by the legislature and governor to provide technical assistance on public management issues. Our mission is to improve efficiency, effectiveness, governance, and accountability in government. Since our founding, we have provided services to 200 of the 351 cities and towns, as well as some state agencies and school districts and other agencies. Capital improvement plans is one of our main areas of business. Okay.
No?
There we go. So I'm going to start off the presentation, talk a little bit in general. What is a capital project? A capital project is typically a non-recurring major expense. It has to be usually over $10,000 and have a useful life of more than 5 years. When we do a capital improvement plan, when anybody does a capital improvement plan, it should be multi-year, usually 5. And our plan that you'll see later in a few minutes is a 5-year capital improvement plan. It should be comprehensive. It should include all funding sources, all projects that are on the docket. And it should be financially viable. And we always strive to produce a plan that is financially viable, as this one is. Something wrong. Sorry about that.
I think she's here.
So the process. We follow a process where we assess all of the capital needs in the town. We collect that information from your department heads, and we create a master list, and we go through a process of scoring those projects based on a number of factors and prioritizing those requests. We then develop a capital investment strategy. We look at your sources of funding, and we try to match up the funding with the projects. We then finalize the project plan, and we're also available to help manage the capital improvement plan. enter. Down arrow, this one.
Yeah.
Yay, I got it. Your department heads submitted 265 requests totaling $587.4 million. Now, that's not the plan. We're not proposing that you do all of that. But that gives you an idea of the magnitude of the need that your department heads identified for us. As you can see, they're across the board in many different departments. From a total number of projects, the most is from your facilities division, your ISD. But from a dollar perspective, the most is the school department at $410 million. So you see, we summarize it here by type. 14 are city facilities, 175 projects are school facilities. The next biggest ones, of course, as you would expect, are vehicles and equipment and public works and park and recreation projects. So that's your overall view of what the need is in the city of Lynn for capital improvement projects. If you look at the need by fiscal year, one of the things we have people do is tell us when this project needs to be done. And based on that, you see we have a peak year in fiscal '22 of need of project requests at almost $370 million. I'm going to talk a little bit about energy efficiency capital needs, and then I'm going to turn it over to Sarah to tell you about the program we're recommending. More than $11 million in energy efficiency projects, potential energy efficiency projects were proposed by your department heads. Even after you take out the MSBA availability that you might potentially get, you're still left with $6.2 million in potential projects that involve energy efficiency. State law provides for 3 ways you can procure projects. 2 are the standard ways of procurement. The third is the one I want to talk about, Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 25A, Energy Management Service Contracts, also known as ESCOs. These are a performance contracting method that we are recommending that you should consider. This is a way of implementing these energy efficiency plans to reduce energy usage and operating costs, improving the building's functionality, but paying for it through the savings in energy. So the ESCO contractor that you procure does everything from design, procurement of equipment, construction, project management, commissioning and training your staff on how to operate these facilities, and provides a guarantee of the savings. And you pay for the improvements from your energy budget, from what you save in gas, electricity, oil, and so forth. This frees up your operating budget to pay for that debt service for that project, get you those energy improvements done without an outlay of city funds. They've been done successfully in many cities and towns across the Commonwealth, and it's one alternative method of financing that we think you should seriously consider. One note, you can combine this. I understand that you're either a green community or you're about to be a green community. You can combine that with green community funding to even further enhance the bang for your buck. So I'm going to turn it over to Sarah to talk about the plan.
So I'm going to walk you through a little bit of the second phase of the process that we went through, and then I will talk to you about the actual plan that we put together, and I have an overview of the projects that are included in the final plan. So as David said, after we go through that first phase of collecting all of the capital needs from all the different departments, we sit down with this very large database and try to prioritize the projects. And the Collins Center, over the course of the last several years, has developed a scoring methodology that we've used in over 24 municipalities in the state. And these are the criteria that are included in that methodology. Now, they're not all weighted the same, but we run every single project through this methodology, and it kicks out a score. And that tells us, gives us a sense of prioritization. Now, I should say that the methodology relies on good data from departments, and sometimes the data is available and sometimes it is not. So the prioritization that we produce through this methodology is not the end-all, be-all. We take that as one piece of the conversation when we talk about which projects actually make it into the plan. The other piece of the conversation, of course, is particular unique priorities, values, or needs of the municipality that we're actually working in. So obviously in this case, for Lynn, we sat down with the mayor and the CFO to talk about what those priorities and unique needs might be. We take the cost of the top priority projects and compare it to what we think you have available for spending on capital. Now, Tony at the end is going to talk about that phase of the process, which is developing the capital investment strategy, but for now, let's assume we already know that. In order to calculate the cost of those projects, we decide whether they're going to be funded through cash or through debt. And if they're going to be funded through debt, potentially, we estimate the cost of the debt service using a conservative approach. We also go through and look to see whether there are any additional grant opportunities that your department heads maybe missed or didn't know about or failed to identify for whatever reason. And we try to point those out because that's a really good way of leveraging your money to get somebody else's money to help you invest in the community. So we go through and identify additional grant opportunities, and we go through this process multiple times until the CIP is what we call balanced. So we strive to balance each of the 5 years, but sometimes if the municipality, if it makes sense for the municipality, we try to balance the plan overall. So one particular year might be out of balance, but overall there's balance. And Tony will talk about how that ended up for Lynn. All right, so this is a summary of what ended up in the actual plan. So of the 265 projects that were identified, we are proposing that you fund 36 of them. Now, that's a little misleading because several of the projects got combined into one. So there was a project, for example, the parking department and the inspectional services department both wanted vehicles. We combined it into one project to be submitted to green communities in the future to try to get hybrid vehicles. So that's an example. So something a little bit higher than 36 of the initial projects were funded, proposed to be funded, totaling almost $231 million. Now, this is the total cost of the projects. Obviously, it does not, it includes, for example, all of the debt you would issue for a project. You would only be paying the debt service for the project in a particular year. So the projects by department break down in this way. You can see that the DPW has the highest number of projects, 10, but only $22 million versus the school district, which has only 4 projects, but $200 million. So obviously, the bulk of the money is going to school projects. That's mainly because we included 2 new middle schools. So 2 $100 million middle schools is the bulk of the plan. For the schools, we've also included a master plan for facilities that we think is a really good and important first step to deal with all of the other projects that were identified by inspectional services in collaboration with the school district. So So that's that. DPW, I'll just say a few words about that 22 million. About 60% of that is state-funded money, so it's coming through a Chapter 90, Mass Works grants, Complete Streets grants, and the other 40% is city money, which represents the mayor's real strong desire to invest in some of the basic infrastructure, the roads, in the city. This table shows you what the funding sources are by fiscal year. So the first two lines, that $73 million, those are the city's funds. You can see that PAYGO, which is the current cash, those are the cash-funded projects, are going to be a little bit over $2 million, and the debt is going to be almost $80 million. That's net MSBA, potential MSBA reimbursement. Everything else from MSBA down is all, well, in this case, state money through various grant programs, some competitive and some, like Chapter 90, nearly guaranteed, I would say. So in reality, of the $231 million in the plan, about $73 million is coming from your coffers, and that's leveraging about $3 for every dollar that you're spending. So I think a good deal. You can also see that, for example, the Green Communities Grant, these two, for the first 2 fiscal years, are actually defined projects. The projects in the last 3 fiscal years are placeholders. In some cases, we do include placeholder projects if specific projects have not been identified, and the real reason that we do that is kind of to indicate that the municipality is really wants to be aggressive with grants and wants to highlight that they're going to try to first find external funding before they turn to taxpayers for money. So even MassWorks is the same. You have $1 million placeholder in the last 4 years of the plan. That will morph over time as you go through this process annually to update the CIP. All right, so now I'm going to just walk through some of the details about the projects, just so that folks can get a sense of what's actually included. And I won't spend too much time, but if anybody has questions, feel free to ask. There is so these are all the debt-funded projects. And you can see sort of the basic description of what they are, the total cost, the city's share versus state share. So most of the state share, as I say, is MSBA. Those are for the 2 middle schools. There's also a grant program through the Mass Cultural Facilities Fund that could be used for a project at the Lynn Auditorium. We have the Chapter 90 supplement. As I mentioned, the mayor is very much in favor of investing in the roads and needing to supplement that Chapter 90 in order to adequately invest in the roads, which is unfortunately the case for most municipalities. Chapter 90 is not sufficient to maintain the roads. We have several vehicles or equipment, a DPW truck, a fire engine. For equipment, we have police portable radios and voting machines. And then these 3 in the middle, the design projects, that's upfront design money for really significant and important road design. Now, once that design is complete, the city intends to try to get those projects on the State Transportation Improvement Plan, the TIP. So that would be, it is an upfront investment, but it's a good one in the long run if you can get those projects on the TIP, which would bring in more state and federal money. This list is the PAYGO projects. Again, that's the cash-funded projects. As I mentioned, that top one, the School Facilities Master Plan, that is a really important one, I think, because as you saw through the capital needs assessment, the schools have a lot of need. There is overcrowding and severe, I would say, deferred maintenance. So there's a lot of need there. Trying to figure out what comes first or what should come first really needs a more technical assessment. So that's why we recommend and why we propose that you include that project on your final plan. We also have police vehicles. That's many police vehicles, I think 10 or so. An ambulance. Two of the downtown parking lots are going to get some work done to them. There are several parks projects, and you can see that the parks projects, we're proposing that the city pursue a park grant each year of the plan, and that's for Lynn would be a 70% reimbursement rate up to $400,000, and so you can see that you get some good reimbursement for those projects. And let's see, IT hardware, that's general stuff that all your department heads and staff need to operate. And then interior painting at the library, which was a priority project of theirs. This is the last table that I want to show you, and it is all of the projects that are funded through other sources, so there's no city contribution here. These are all the grant projects. So the first three is the Community Compact IT program. There's a alternating year you can apply, then you have to take a year off, and then you can apply again. So there are three of those projects. One for servers, one for a digital health department, which is a great customer service tool for the ISD Health Division. Some improvements for the public safety communications system. There's Mass EEA money for a community path. These are the green communities projects that we have put together for you. There's the two, as I mentioned, there are two hybrid vehicle projects, and then this is the placeholder for school energy improvements. So that would be $200,000 for each of the last 3 years of the plan. MassWorks and Complete Streets. We had one identified MassWorks project, which was the Broad Street traffic signals, one Complete Streets project, so those are going to be your FY20 projects. And then Chapter 90 money and some repairs to the dam. And there is a repair grant program for the dam. It's fairly competitive, but we recommend that the city apply first and then decide if they get rejected, how to move forward with that with that project. All right, that's all I have.
My name is Anthony Teresi, and I was tasked with developing what we call at the Collins Center capital investment strategy. Just to get some definitions, when we talk capital improvement program, we're talking about projects. So a project might have a project cost of $10 million or $5 million. Well, the other piece of that is, what is the budget for that? When you're talking about debt, there'll be principal and interest cost. As Sarah mentioned, there's pay-as-you-go, so that's just a one-time cost. And as she mentioned, this plan leverages a significant amount of city dollars with state grants and other sources. What we feel is very important to look at is what has happened in the city historically. So this first slide, we take a look at what did the city's investment look like, and we went back 3 years, and we gather the data from city finance office, and we look at debt service, which is the cost for issuing bonds. Capital leases are a form of debt that the City of Lynn uses to fund a number of capital equipment purchases in different departments, and that's in the detail budget. So we come up with the total existing capital investment. So if you look across 17, 18, and 19, in 17, Lynn was about $10 million, dropped to $9 million, and dropped to $8 million in 19. We compare it to the budget, and theoretically, your investment in capital, which the infrastructure of the community, should be stable, at least stable, and in many cases, if you have a backlog, trying to find methods to increase that investment. But what has happened in Lynn in the last 3 years is a pretty significant drop in the capital investment of the city. And I think some of that is reflected certainly because of budgetary pressures. But nonetheless, the amount of the city's capital investment compared to your total operating budgets,
was at 3.1% in 17, drops to 2.3% in 19. In the CIP document, I believe we also have a chart in the back that looks at cities comparable to the city of Lynn. And even at 3.1%, the city's investment in its capital infrastructure was pretty low compared to other cities. So what does that mean? As Sarah went through the list of projects, there's a cost associated with those. Some are pay-as-you-go, and some are related to debt. We wanted to develop a strategy for the city that gradually brings your investment in replacing and maintaining and investing in your capital infrastructure back up to the level of 3.1%. And as it says, that's more consistent with the best practice of many, it says Massachusetts cities, cities your size. One thing I do want to say is Lynn is somewhat unique because your water and sewer is not part of the city budget. So that debt is not shown in these numbers, so your number is somewhat lower than what would be the average of Massachusetts cities because it doesn't include water and sewer debt, but nonetheless it is still low. So we looked at the historical data to just kind of look at the baseline, what's happened with that, with the city's investment. And I know that's probably really small to look at, but as I mentioned, what we wanted to do was gradually bring the city's investment up. I mentioned it was 2.3 in 19. We want to step that up to get it to about 0.1% each year, which is a very conservative increase. But over time, if you're able to keep an investment up, you'll notice the improvement in the whole physical inventory of the community. So in order to do that, we take what is your existing debt. We know that's in place. This does not include the debt associated with the deficit financing. We feel that our task was to develop a capital improvement program, and therefore we consider debt associated with capital projects, but not debt associated with the operating deficit. We then project projects that have already been authorized by the city council. The city has not yet borrowed those. You will be. We've projected what that debt will be. That's just an estimate. We take your existing leases, and I know there's some discussion about whether you will refinance those or not, but these are existing leases. We show your existing capital investment, and then we project based upon the projects that Sarah listed and that we're proposing the city undertake, and they're proposed in different fiscal years. And we propose them in different fiscal years, both based upon the priority of the department and the city, but also available funding. And then we total that and come up with, what with the inclusion of the CIP, what will be the existing and proposed capital investment? And that's this line. So it's going up from about $600,000 to a new investment of about $5 million. Now that's not the project cost, that's the budgetary cost of this. So again, as I mentioned, our goal was to get the city's investment up to where it was historically, just as recent as 3 years ago. And it's done very gradually. Now what we have not done in this project, we have not developed this looking at revenue expenditure forecast or operating budget projections. I mean, we recognize that in budgeting, you have to balance the needs of the operating budget and the capital budget. And that will be part of the process you'll be going through as you review this. We did want to lay out a strategy that if it fits in with other needs and priorities of the community, you could bring your investment back up to what we think would be an adequate level for the community. The last section on the bottom just deals with what Sarah was talking about, that we try to balance the whole 5-year plan in total. So in some years, there may be more money invested than we have. In other years, there may be less money. We're also recommending something called a capital stabilization fund. That's a special fund that would be established by City Council. Into that fund, you would appropriate monies that meet your target, but you may not need that in that year because of the cost of the projects for that year. But that money is part of your target. So that money would go into this capital stabilization fund. Requires I believe, a 2/3 vote to set it up initially by the council, a majority of vote to appropriate money into it, and then I believe it's a 2/3 vote out. Nonetheless, that's a best practice that we've been recommending to a lot of cities. It actually exists. I think Sean's here. It actually exists in a lot of communities now. It's a pretty effective way, as a reserve fund is, to kind of balance swings in 1 year versus the other. So as I mentioned, this is one last. I'm going to skip this. Okay.
So just to wrap up this slide, yeah, that's what Tony's saying down here. So you can see you've had a surplus in the first 4 years of the plan, about 1.9 million. In the 5th year of the plan, because then that's the year that a lot of school debt would be projected to hit for those middle schools, should you follow the timing that is in this plan, you would have 1.9 million in the bank to cover this $1.2 million deficit in that 5th year. And these two charts just really visually demonstrate what we're talking about and what we're recommending. So the first chart, scenario A, shows you without additional capital investment, just based on what you have committed to spend, what would happen to your investment over time. So this is 17, 18, and 19. That's the drop that Tony already talked to you about. Now, even including the authorized but unissued debt, this is what would happen to your investment over the next 5-year period. So it's going to drop even further without additional investment. And so scenario B, this chart at the bottom shows you the purple blocks there, show you how we propose you inch up that investment until you're at a level that, that will serve you a little bit better. So it takes the dip, but then rises gradually. So that's just a visual example. Yeah. Okay. Sean, did you want to say anything? Oh, yeah.
Council have any questions?
Any questions at all about the process or the plan?
Yeah.
Council Field?
Thank you. Just with consideration of the bond rating, as far as the investment into these capital projects, is that, obviously that is taken into consideration as far as what we're able to borrow, at what rate we're able to borrow at. Over the past, we're looking at, you compared fiscal year 17 to 19, there's certainly a drop in the percentage, but the overall cost might be close because of that drop in the bond rating, which, certainly there's better years than others. But that could have an effect on it. And a second question would be those grants that are targeted, that you've targeted, how much of those, what percentage of those is towards a need base? Whereas I'll use the example of the fire department and police departments that were just issued grants to hire new staffing, and they recognize that immediate need for public safety in the city. How many of those grants that you show as proposed are based on that, on the city's need?
Well, we did include the S&P, your recent rating, and you know, it's unfortunate that the city's rate has dropped. It's only dropped slightly. It was single A plus up until 2017. Then it dropped to A minus. Just a slight drop. I think the most important thing is when they give the outlook, when S&P gives the outlook for the city, and they do talk about one of the most important things is the city being able to sustain an operating budget, and showing improvement in a number of management practices. This will be one item that will definitely be looked favorably upon by your bond rating agency. They are very enthusiastic about communities that actually adopt a number of financial management practices. Capital improvement program is one. Financial management policies is two, and we're currently working with your finance director on that. And the third is revenue expenditure forecast. So with those three items in place, hopefully within a year, when you go for another bond rating, those are three really positive steps that the city will have taken that will,
thank you,
I'm sure be looked very favorably upon.
Any other questions?
Second part.
I won't try to speak to the specifics of each grant. Some of them do take into account need, and some of them are tilt more towards the competitive side. But overall, the point of including the grants is not to pretend or claim that you'll receive every grant. It's really to indicate that this is our strategy, that we want to be strategic about how we spend the limited resources we have. And so first, as a first step, we're going to ask and support our department heads as they apply for all the grants that are out there. And so that was part of the strategy. But certainly there are some grants that would take into consideration particulars about a municipality in terms of need. One, just as an example, for the park grant, it is a competitive grant, and yet the reimbursement rate changes based on the particularities of the municipality. So it can range from, I think, 52% up to 70%, and Lynn's reimbursement rate is 70, so a higher rate.
Any other questions? Councilor LaPierre.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have just a thought about, was there any consideration given on the MSBA side on the middle school project? Because of the situation we're in financially, we're not yet ready or in the pipeline, but there's an interest to move forward with a statement of interest and so forth. Is there any way that we can utilize the feasibility study from just 18 months ago or 2 years ago to satisfy so that new dollars don't have to be written into for the same, essentially the same type of plan? Can you comment on that at all, or was that looked at?
I will say that when we finalized the plan, the decision from MSBA was not known in terms of the middle school. And so, although we do cite in the plan the fact that the timing on the middle schools will be in question because you have to work so closely with MSBA. Obviously, you're not going to go forward without MSBA. I don't know, I can't speak to how the MSBA process works. I don't know if maybe else maybe you can't. But.
I just don't want to be, it's almost a $750,000 study again that you have to go through, where it's essentially a kind of new plan still, I don't know if there's an opportunity to get a grant for that, or where's that money going to come from? Yeah.
I might be able to, or the mayor.
I think it's a great question, and I think typically they don't allow you to resubmit without spending our money, seeing we've already been through it. But we have asked, and I think we're going to pursue that to see, because I think you're definitely right. We had done a lot of that preliminary work already. So is that going to be something that we can use and utilize without having to come up with the extra money? So I think it's a great question. I don't know if there's any more questions. I'd like just to make a couple comments, if that's okay, Mr. President. Unless there's any other questions. I just want to thank the department heads. I know many of them are here right now, but all of them were very helpful, and I know work closely with the Collins Center to really help develop this plan. I think it lays out a breadth and depth of substantial investment we need to make as a city, but I think it does put a roadmap in together about how we can start to move forward. And I just want to make a point on the 3 projects that were mentioned here. If you haven't already heard, those are the 3, that's the East Essex Street, Weston Ave, and the Euclid Genes area. The MPO meeting last week, we actually, the Weston Ave project scored the highest of any project in the state. The Essex Street, which means that's very good news, means we're the need and the plans are reflective in the score and with the MPO's view that this is a project that needs to move forward. The Essex Street project was scored number 3, and the Euclid Avenue project scored in a different pool of money right at the top of the list. So those 3 projects, as stated, we have to come up with our percentage on the engineering, but it's you know, with $5 or $6 million for $50+ million, or closer to $59 million in terms of state and federal money that will come in for those projects. So those projects are moving forward in terms of what we need to do preliminarily, and I think that's great news that as we start to explore some of the grant money and other options, Complete Streets and Mass Works, that recognizing our fiscal challenges, that we are trying to look outside the box and address substantial investment we need to make as a city. And I think the point was really well taken. As our bond rating continues to be a challenge, the bond rating agencies are looking for us to then make those investments in our capital needs, and then that will allow us to then slowly move out of the from the down low to a little bit higher up on the rating agencies. So, but again, I just want to get up and thank the council for your interest in this. Thank the President for helping this presentation happen. And again, thank the department heads and my staff for working closely with the Collins Center and helping create this plan, and look forward to working with all of you to find a way to move forward on some of these investments. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know Sean Cronin would like to say a few words. He's the overseer from the state.
Yeah, just very briefly, and I'll probably repeat a few things, but before I do, don't forget one thing. When the city borrows money, you actually borrow under the qualified bond program, so you actually get the benefit of the state's bond rating. So they're at AA, so even though you're lower, you're getting that rate, so the interest rates are lower. But so just a couple comments. This is a great proposal put together by the Collins Center. Per the statute that created this position and allowed you to deficit finance, I need to put something in writing, and I will do that when the mayor formally submits his version to you. And I'm not going to focus much on the priorities. That's a local decision to make. I'm not going to weigh in on that. What I care about is the financial underpinnings of it. And as Tony said, you know, we often talk about the 3-legged stool of municipal finance, have a set of policies that drive a forecast, and the capital plan is interwoven within those things. So you will have all those, okay? Now, some of this probably sounds daunting, 500 million, 300 million, how are we going to do that? We don't have any money, we had to borrow money from the state, all this stuff. Just remember what was said, that this is financed over time. And the critical piece of not making the mistake that many communities have in the state, which is you see debt run off, and you see that as a reduction in a line item that you can then use to balance other parts of your budget. Then when it comes time to invest in capital, you say, we can't do it. And you say, why? You know, you had the capacity a few years ago, where did it go? Well, it's in salaries, or it's in benefits, or it's in some other program that we expanded. So that graph that was up there, you know, if you walk away with anything, that's the thing to think about, because that's really how all this hangs together. It's, in my opinion, it's actually a slow ramp up. I think you could ramp up a little bit more, but there is that annual debate about, bricks and mortar versus people and operating, and that's something that you'll go through every budget cycle. But it's a very good financial approach. Again, we're capturing the old debt that runs off. The incremental approach to increased investment is really good, and it's going to require discipline. And an example of that is the stabilization fund that Tony talked about. It's a great way to say, hey, if our policy is X% of revenue, and in this year, we actually don't need all that, instead of saying, well, now it's available for operating, then next year it's gone, you say, well, we're going to put it in the stabilization fund, so when we need it for capital, it's available for capital. So that will take some discipline, okay? And just some other things, clearly the outside opportunities, there's a lot of state money available, MSBA being the obvious one. You have a lot of schoolwork that needs to be done. But there's a whole, complete streets, the park grants, all those that have been highlighted. Again, not guaranteed, but there's a lot of opportunities. So it is a good mix of local money and state money. And again, while the numbers seem really large, what you haven't seen, and I'm sure Tony has it, is the debt management plan. And what that shows you is how the debt is amortized over 10 years or 15 years and 20 years. And you might be banning the money, short-term borrowing for a couple of years, managing your debt so that when the debt drops, then you permanently finance. There's a whole plan behind that I'm sure, Tony, if you're interested in it, could run through, not tonight, but at some point, because that's a really, really important part. You need to know how long you're borrowing for, what's it look like as other debts coming on and coming off. That's a critical part of it. And then the last thing I'll say is the concept of having a master plan done for your schools strongly suggests that. You might think it's a lot of money, but you need it. I lived that once in my previous life, and it played a huge role in really getting everybody on the same page as to what an independent review of the school's needs are, and then how do you fit it in to this financing plan. So I know people don't always love to spend money on consultants and stuff, but you need that independent review to see what's needed, and then how do you fit it into your financial plan. So overall, I think it was a great job by the Collins Center. Like I said, when the mayor submits, I'll do what I'm required to do per the legislation and put something in writing. But overall, I thought it was great. So.
Thank you, Sean. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd be remiss, and I should have said it earlier, the school committee is here as well, and I think it's important. We've talked about it, about both school committee and council being at meetings together, so I think it's great they're here. The schools are definitely a big need, but I think it's really important that we continue to work together. I know that's been a goal of all of ours, so I just want to recognize the school committee members that are here, and I know some couldn't be here tonight, but I think it's important that we continue to work together and find the right way to move forward on all of the projects that impact the city in a positive way. So thanks again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any other questions? Let's say thank you to the Collins Group. Thank you for coming tonight. What's the wish of the council? You guys want to stay all night? It's up to you.
Adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Motion made, seconded.